doesn't really have any desire to set foot in this country again. Would they be invited? I don't see an actual physical invitation being issued. It'd be very difficult for the King to say no. I really don't think a reunion with Harry and Meghan is going to do anything for stress levels. Prince Harry was one of the most, if not the most popular member of the royal family. He was free. He was alive.
Hello, I'm Matt Wilkinson and welcome to our show Royal Exclusive. With me today is broadcaster and royal correspondent Sarah Hewson. Sarah, welcome to our show.
Thanks very much for having me.
It's great to have you on. Well, let's get started because there's a lot to talk about. William, this week, Prince William, we need to talk about his homelessness project because this is the first year anniversary of this scheme, and he wants to make homelessness rare, brief and unrepeated. Okay, he wants to end homelessness. This is incredibly ambitious. This is one of the most ambitious projects and selfless projects that I can think of a member of the royal family to attempt. He actually wants to end homelessness. I want to get your opinion whether, you know, do you think it's achievable? Is he doing the right thing? What do you think?
It is an extraordinary ambition, isn't it? And a huge challenge to end homelessness once and for all. And actually, it's a challenge that's getting greater because the number of people living on the streets has surged in recent months. It's also not a challenge that he can meet alone. And that is what he's doing with Homewards. He's effectively bringing people, organisations, the public and private sector, individuals, influential individuals together in 6 areas of the United Kingdom to try and find local solutions to the homelessness crisis. He cites the example of everyone in during COVID as proof that with the will, it can be done. And I think he sees himself in the same way as his father took on this role as a convener of people. He can bring those people together to try and find a solution to it.
This is something that he's always wanted, or he's always had an interest in, and now he's finally, you know, decided, now I'm Prince of Wales, this is my moment to do this, because of his late mother. When he was a child, he would go out with his mother and they would, you know, meet homeless people on the streets because it was something that Diana was keen to show him to.
This is a cause that's almost in his DNA. Yeah. He was 11 years old when Princess Diana first took him to the Passage homeless shelter. He still maintains great connections with them as patron, also with Centrepoint. It is a way of honouring his mother. And it is something that he has always wanted to try and take on. When he was 14, he apparently said to Princess Diana, if I become king, I'm going to let homeless people live in Buckingham Palace. I mean, we talked about ambition. I mean, that's one way. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because he, in his own words, is an unlikely advocate for homelessness because he's a member of the royal family. He's got multiple homes himself. The royal family have got multiple properties that are effectively sitting empty. But he is an advocate and he is someone who can bring people together, and he is someone who is determined to tackle this once and for all. There is a danger, of course, that he's going to stray into political territory with this. I know that Sir Keir Starmer says he wants a cross-party approach to homelessness in his government. But actually, I think this is one of those social issues that transcends politics. And there's a real need for members of the royal family to be relevant to young people. And I don't think that our younger generation want our members of the royal family just to be faces on a stamp and figureheads, planting a tree or unveiling a plaque. They want them to care, and they want to know that they're doing something about those really important issues, climate change and homelessness being 2 of the most important.
You mentioned about Buckingham Palace. Tourists are now allowed in for the first time. They get to see the principal corridor, 240 foot long, and two of the major rooms.
The most exciting part for members of the public going in there will be the centre room, because that is the room where members of the royal family gather before they head out onto that iconic balcony. You're not actually allowed to move the net curtains or have a look out yourself, are you?
They're the most famous net curtains in the world,
Absolutely.
Aren't you? Because when you're watching up at the balcony, you're waiting for the little twitch, aren't you, in the balcony?
We've seen little Prince George's face exactly. behind, haven't we, before?
But I'll tell you what surprised me is how low the wall is. Just over your knee.
So hopefully none of them suffer from vertigo.
Yeah, well, it is. I was like, I'd be quite nervous standing out
Particularly
there.
with the children.
Particularly with the children, yeah. One concern I have, by opening up things like the Palace and Balmoral recently, does it ruin the kind of magic,
the
and
mystique.
the mystery? Yeah.
It's a really interesting one because Buckingham Palace, the iconic building that it is kind of the #1 tourist destination for anyone wanting to come and visit the United Kingdom. And I think it's estimated that the royal family bring in about £1.7 billion in tourism to the UK, and Buckingham Palace is absolutely key to that. And partly because of its mystique. They are popular not because they are mausoleums, but because they are living, breathing buildings.
It's interesting, the King, we're told, before the Balmoral opened, he went to have a quick look before the tourists come in. And recently he's been apparently marching up and down the corridor, making sure everything is in the right place. And I just have these images of the King,
checking for any dust,
making sure there's dust, turning the ornaments round the right way. He's really keen to open up these palaces. He wants to make them more publicly accessible. It was actually his decision, you know, to do it. And I'm not going to question the King. It's his house. He can do what he wants with it. But it is a good tour if you ever.
It's also a good revenue generator for the royal family.
You mentioned Balmoral. We're going to have summer soon.
Yes.
Well, hopefully we'll have summer in this country soon once the sun comes out. But the royal family will go on summer soon. They'll have a big long summer break up at Balmoral. So we really have to speak about the Princess of Wales.
Yes.
We were hoping the Princess of Wales. We're hoping, you know, a Wimbledon appearance because she loves Wimbledon. You know, we'd love to kind of see her there if she is fit and ready. We've got a big sporting weekend. We have the football result, obviously, in the semi-final. The King and William were both absolutely delighted. They've sent messages, and hopefully William will go to the final. But we have a big summer, and how important do you think Balmoral is going to be for the Princess of Wales's recovery, meeting the King and relaxing?
Firstly, I'm going to commend the King on his message after England beat the Netherlands, because he was fastest finger first getting that message out there. And
he beat Prince William.
Funny. He beat Prince William, president of the FA and a massive football fan. Of course, Prince William congratulating Ollie Watkins, Aston Villa striker. William, a massive Villa fan. The King, though, I think he spoke for the nation, didn't he, when he implored the England team to perhaps, if he could encourage them to avoid any last-minute wonder goals or penalties drama, it might be good for the nation's collective heart rate. And I thought that was a really, really good and apt statement from him. So I think highly likely we'll see William in Berlin this weekend for the final, as a football fan, but also as president of the FA. As you mentioned, the Princess of Wales, Wimbledon, if she's able to be there, it's very, very important to her. And she's a massive tennis fan. She talked about wanting to do things that bring her joy. That is one of those. And then it's time for the holidays. The children break up from school. The Waleses will head to their home in Norfolk, which was their sanctuary after they revealed Kate's cancer diagnosis. It will be their sanctuary again. And then they'll be spending some time with other members of the royal family at Balmoral.
Balmoral is where it's like the 2 times a year where they all gather.
Yes.
So at Christmas they'll be just for a couple of days, you know, at Sandringham, but Balmoral, parts of the family will go up there for a week, and they'll have barbecues, and they will all be there around the King throughout August and early September, having their time, you know, with the King. And I'm just wondering, what's your take on how beneficial that might be for the Princess of Wales to spend more time with the King up there in the countryside with the family? This is a real moment for them all to really recharge their batteries and start in September.
It's a moment to take stock, isn't it? After what has been a tumultuous year for the royal family. As you mentioned, 2 moments where the family get together, and the Waleses weren't there at Easter for the gathering at Windsor. They will be, we hope, joining the King at Balmoral. The Princess of Wales has talked about, you know, spending time in nature, keeping calm, all of those things, that kind of holistic approach to giving herself the best possible chance of beating this cancer. And I think for them to come together, and we know that bond between the Princess of Wales and the King has always been there, but has been strengthened by their shared experience. And I think it will be very poignant for them coming together at Balmoral and just having that time away from everything else to take stock. And as you mentioned, that they do normal family things, like they have a barbecue. And, you know, we used to have Prince Philip on the barbecue and the Queen Elizabeth washing up. I don't know what King Charles's role and Camilla's role are this time, but also for the children to be among the other royal children, with the Tyndall's children, Peter Philip's children. It's a chance for them all to get together and have some kind of normality, albeit in a great big Highland playground.
It is, and as I say, all the family go. So, Peter Phillips might take his new girlfriend.
Well,
that could
might
be exciting.
took her to Wimbledon this week.
Took her to Wimbledon, yeah, to Ascot. So I've got high hopes for this, by the way.
Yes.
By the way, I've got high hopes for this relationship. Princess Anne will be there. Edward and Sophie, they'll take their children. But there has to be the question, would the Duke and Duchess of Sussex go to Balmoral? Would they be invited? Will they be welcome? What's your thoughts?
Well, we are always told, aren't we, Matt, that the King's door is always open to Harry and Meghan. Would they be invited? I don't see an actual physical invitation being issued, but were they to ask, it'd be very difficult for the King to say no. He doesn't want this distance with his son, and he certainly doesn't want this barrier between him and his grandchildren. He's met Lilibet once.
Yeah.
Archie just a handful of times. That's really, really sad. And obviously geography plays a part in that. We're not going to see the King jumping on a plane and heading over to California to see them. Would they be welcome? Look, we know things with the Waleses and the Sussexes are extremely tense. I don't see any signs of any thawing there. And it's really not a priority, is it, for the Waleses now? One of the things that they really want to focus on is keeping things calm, stress levels down during the Princess of Wales's recuperation. I really don't think a reunion with Harry and Meghan is going to do anything for stress levels at this point in time. And it's just not their focus.
And we're going to have to wait on this. I mean, I don't really think Meghan's been to Balmoral that very much. I'm just trying to cast my mind back whether I think she's been invited a few times back in the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. I think they turned it down.
I'm not sure that Meghan is someone who particularly wants to go off stalking and shooting. We know that, when she first went to Sandringham with Prince Harry and some of his friends and they were going out on a shoot, she was distinctly unimpressed by that. I don't know that Balmoral would be her first choice.
It has to move both ways. I don't know if you recall, I think it was last summer, the King, I think Harry was coming over and the King said, it was the anniversary of the late Queen's death, actually, I remember now. And Harry said, I'm coming over for an Invictus event or a Well Child event. It was on his way to Invictus. So Harry was coming over for a Well Child event. And he said, could I see you? And the King's team fired back and said, well, yes, he's at Balmoral, come to Balmoral. And he said, no, that doesn't really fit with my plans. I need to do some things in London. So there are these little kind of shoots of potential goodwill. There is a chance that there's so many properties at Balmoral if one of them just said, OK, and made the effort. Yeah,
and there could be this kind of peace summit between father and son. But, there have been suggestions that there'll be this huge, full family summit and everybody gathered to kind of thrash things out once and for all. I don't buy into that. I can't see that happening. And all the signs around Meghan are that she doesn't really have any desire to set foot in this country again. Prince Harry came back for the service at St Paul's to mark 10 years of the Invictus Games. They were then heading off on their tour and Meghan dipped into Heathrow Airport and straight back out again. Yeah. She didn't come to the UK. There was, of course, the controversy over whether the King had snubbed Harry by not meeting him, and then apparently Harry had been offered a room at one of the palaces and had turned it down because of security. I mean, frankly, it's a mess, and it's a very sorry mess. It's sad, and I think, mistakes have been made along the way on both sides. But as long as there is no trust, and that's the fundamental issue here, as long as there's no trust between them, that those conversations that they have aren't going to end up on a breakfast show or in a documentary or on the pages of a book, then those conversations just can't happen.
And as I say, if the King was to say, yes, of course you can come to Balmoral, they'd have to make sure there were other certain members of the family would not want to be there. I'm just talking about the Waleses. That couldn't happen. But I guarantee there will be stories over the next couple of weeks and months, true or not, floating around saying that they have been invited.
Well, we're getting into silly season, so there's bound to be some of these stories. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is we just don't know. Yeah. We don't know what is going on behind closed doors with the Sussexes and the royal family. And obviously, we don't quite know whose side of it to believe. The example of Harry when he came over and the statement was put out by his spokesperson that the king was too busy to meet him, and then a rather different narrative, recollections may vary, that phrase that keeps on rearing its head. So it's very difficult, but as you say, there will be certain members of the family who will be less than willing to open their arms to Harry and Meghan if they were to return.
Just a final point on that. When Harry came over, it was the Sussexes that put that statement out.
Exactly, it was the Sussexes spokesperson.
It was them that said, "Oh, the king's too busy." That doesn't go down well.
Well, it doesn't help, does it? Because actually, less said the better.
Yeah.
If you want to heal relations, actually, it's got to be done privately behind closed doors.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not great for us, of course.
They're not talking.
But they're not
so
talking. They're not talking. There's lines of communication. This is no ordinary family. Yeah. They don't pick up the phone and have those conversations. Perhaps not helped by the fact the king doesn't even have a mobile phone, so you've got to try and find him somewhere or go through Camilla or whatever else. But, they do not have those conversations that we might expect.
Well, look, I might pop up to Balmoral over the summer. It's a lovely place. So I often pop up there just to have a little look around, but it's gorgeous. And I'm sure that, Princess Catherine will have a wonderful, relaxing time there in the kingdom.
We'll be looking out for members of the family and perhaps the new Prime Minister attending the Highland Games as well.
But on Harry, so I want to get your thoughts on this Pat Tillman Award. We discussed this last week, and, I'm under the impression that he's got this award for his efforts with Invictus, which I do find commendable.
Yep.
I've always said that I've been to the Invictus Games twice, and I think you've seen it as well, and I think it's a really good thing. And I still think it's commendable what he did in Afghanistan. I know people knock it, but I still think serving in Afghanistan was a very honourable thing that he did. But he's picked up this award, or he will be picking up this award, and his mother, Pat Tillman's mother, is angry about this and doesn't think he deserves it. What do you think Harry's reaction? We haven't heard from Harry as to, if he's annoyed that people were criticising for picking up this award. Should he pick it up? Should he say, no, this is inappropriate? Where do you sit on that?
I think he's going to be very stung by the backlash to this award, because you're right, what he has done through the Invictus Games is extremely laudable. I think it's the best thing that he has done. This is his legacy project, and there are so many people who would say that he has changed their lives, even saved their lives through what he has done with the Invictus Games. The problem is that the backlash this time round isn't coming from the usual suspects. It is coming from Mary Tillman, Pat Tillman's mother, who says she can't understand why they'd pick such a divisive and controversial figure. It is coming from senior military figures that Prince Harry would respect their opinion. The likes of Lord West, the former head of the Royal Navy, for example, saying he should turn this down, that he doesn't deserve it. And that's really, really going to sting for him. Everything that he's done, his Afghanistan service, the Invictus Games, the problem is that that is being drowned out by the noise and the controversies over recent years. And that's what Mary Tillman is referring to.
I think the what you pointed out there was what she said, a divisive figure. And that is something that I think is going to stick. Because we talk about, I think there was they were called, grifters.
Yes.
And that's something that sticks, these kind of names. And I think this is the problem for Harry, is that he's becoming, as Mary Tillman says, a divisive figure.
He is, and all of the good work that he has done is unfortunately overshadowed by, Oprah, Netflix, Spare, the mudslinging. Unfortunately, those are the noises that are much, much louder in this. And when we see him at the Invictus Games, you see the old Harry, the true Harry. He comes to life again.
Well, has he always been like this? Has he always been a divisive figure? You must have met him or interviewed him multiple times. Has he always been this, as a divisive figure?
No. I mean, Prince Harry was one of the most, if not the most popular member of the royal family because of his ability to relate to people. He was seen as relatable. Yes, there were the headlines about the party prince and whatever, but
that was part of his charm.
It was part of his charm, his ability to communicate with people. He was an extremely powerful force within the royal family because of that knack of reaching people that others couldn't. And he had his mother's touch in that way. And, I spent many years following him. I went to Lesotho with him, for example, in 2008. And there he was free of all of the constraints of palace life, of royal life. There was none of this suggestion of being the spare and the sibling rivalry. He was in Africa, a country he loves. He was honouring his mother's legacy. He was surrounded by army colleagues as they were building a centre for disabled children in this tiny African kingdom. He was working with children. Everything that brought him joy. He was free. He was alive. We know he's got a problem with the media, but actually he didn't show it there at all. He was very happy to have us there and on board. And I found him to be extremely engaging, extremely positive. He was doing so much good and he knew it. And it was his coming of age project, really, wasn't it? It was putting aside the negative headlines, the Nazi uniform, for example, the kind of drugs, the partying. This was him saying, look who I am, look who I can be. And Centre Barley's still going, the Invictus Games, superb. We need to see more of that side of Harry.
I do wonder, I'm just thinking back, at the beginning we were talking about William's project, Homeless, because that's, Royal Foundation project. He's got the whole kind of royal family kind of royal household kind of system behind him, and he can go away for 5 years and really try and achieve stuff. And you say the Centre Barley stuff that Harry was doing, he had this whole machinery behind him. Now he doesn't have any of that, and he is just becoming a divisive figure, picking up awards. And it is, we talk about this a lot, but you do kind of think what he could achieve if he was here as a working royal, because you saw that good work when you were in Africa.
Yeah, and when Harry spoke, people listened, and when Harry wanted something done, it was done. And you saw that in Lesotho with Centre Barley, and the pride that he got from something that started as a gap year project for him to then a lasting legacy, a project making a difference to a generation of young people, children, many of whom have been orphaned by HIV and AIDS, who contracted the disease themselves in the AIDS epidemic. He and Meghan both actually could have made such a difference. And particularly now, when you look at the royal family and how difficult and how thin on the ground they have been over the past few months with the absence of the King, the Princess of Wales. We've, of course, had Princess Anne's ill health lately as well. The role that, we're told Meghan didn't like playing second fiddle. Well, they wouldn't have been playing second fiddle right now, would they? They would have been front and centre, and they could have played such a key role. And I think it's really, really sad to see just how things have changed.
Well, they've gone.
They've
got their new life in California. Was Harry, was he one of the favourite people for you to interview? Or just a quick run through of anyone
Prince Harry and Prince Philip were two of my
Philip.
favourite members of the royal family, really, because they both had that same kind of twinkle, and you never quite knew what they were going to do next. I never got to interview the Duke of Edinburgh, the late Duke of Edinburgh. I did interview the Prince of Wales on several occasions, of course, because of his position as then heir to the throne now. Then Prince of Wales, I'm talking about Prince Charles as he was in my time. That was hugely significant, going to interview the heir to the throne. And I always found him to be extremely charming, a details man, always across his brief. I mean, the one person that all of us would have wanted to interview was the late Queen. And you talked earlier about mystique and maintaining that mystique. She did it because she never gave a single interview. But, I met her on multiple occasions. The very first occasion I met her was in Uganda at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and she and the Duke of Edinburgh hosted a reception for the journalists that were following them. We were all introduced to them. It was my first time, my first royal tour, and we were all incredibly nervous in the room. And thank goodness Arthur Edwards was there to give me a few pointers on what to do and how to address them and what to say and not to say, and save me in that instance. But
good old Arthur, he's bailed me out a few times.
Yeah, gold dust.
He's gold dust, isn't he? Based on all your knowledge and your experience of meeting members of the royal family and interviewing them, we have the dreaded quickfire questions. OK, if you're ready?
I'm ready.
Right, OK. So, We've got this one because I don't know if you've seen, Prince William was at the RAF Valley this week, going back to see his old unit, and he had a mug that said HRH, Prince of Wales. But when he was back in 2013, he had a mug saying Big Willie. Okay, because that was his nickname on the base. Okay, and so this is the reason for this one. What is the funniest or strangest royal family nickname that you've heard?
Well, of course, Mike Tyndall revealed his nickname for Prince William recently, which was on a similar theme, One Pint Willie, because of his lack of drinking prowess. They've got a lot of nicknames in the royal family. The late Queen had multiple. Gary, as she was called by a young Prince William, because as a toddler he couldn't say granny. And he was overheard shouting for Gary in one of the royal palaces, and someone was saying, "Who's Gary? Who's Gary?" And the Queen said, "Oh, that's me. He hasn't learnt to say granny yet."
I did not know that. No. That's really good.
And Prince Philip, she of course had Lilibet, which was her father's name for her. The great-grandchildren called her Gangan. But my favourite was Prince Philip's term of endearment for her, which was Cabbage.
Yes. Yes, you can imagine him saying it to her as well, can't you? Right, next question. Who is the smartest member of the royal family that you've interviewed?
Princess Anne.
Okay.
I interviewed her at Buckingham Palace in her apartments at Buckingham Palace, and it was a very a difficult interview to do in many ways, because it was an interview to prepare obituaries for the late Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. So it was sensitive, and we were all a little nervous as we were setting up for the interview. I was there with my crew, and we weren't expecting her for a while, but I turned around and realised there was a presence in the room, and Princess Anne had snuck in through a side door and was just observing. And she had multiple pointed questions to check that I was across my brief. But what I was most impressed with was that she went around and she introduced herself and shook hands with every single member of the crew. We sat down and we did the interview, and a lengthy interview. And at the end, she stood up and she thanked individually by name every single member of the crew that was in the room. And, you know, she knew that. I thought that was extremely, extremely important, because she knows when she meets someone, of course, they know who she is. But doesn't it mean a lot for her to remember a name?
That's incredible, yeah. So she remembered the names, went back, and that's...
And not just, you know, recognising me as the interviewer, but every single person who was playing a role in that. So I
don't know if you saw, but apparently this story rolls around every couple of years, that Strictly Come Dancing, or in America I think it's Dancing with the Stars. They want to host that at Buckingham Palace, but it keeps falling through. To be honest, Buckingham Palace doesn't have the room for it, doesn't have space, but they keep trying.
What do you mean they don't have space for it?
They don't have space for it. Even I was in there the other day, and even the ballroom where they have the state dinners, it's not big enough to house everything.
I suppose once you start bringing in all of that kind of equipment, and
is it ridiculous to think that Buckingham Palace
and a live audience
and all the equipment and
wouldn't it be fabulous though?
Yeah, of course. That's why they keep trying. That's why they keep trying. But which member of the royal family do you think would do the best on Strictly Come Dancing?
Got to be Queen Camilla. Got to be Queen Camilla. She loves dancing. She's danced with some of the Strictly pros before. She took up ballet during lockdown. She became a silver swan. She's made no secret of her love of watching Strictly, so absolutely her. And I can only imagine her practising back at Clarence House with the King, because he's quite a mover himself. It doesn't take much to persuade him to get up and dance, particularly on a royal tour, does it?
What about Prince William's dad dancing?
Well, yeah. I mean, he might be kept in because of his position, but I'm not sure he'd be kept in on his ballroom skills or his Latin.
I love that video of him where he's dancing at Taylor Swift. I thought that's just proper dad dancing.
Proper dad dancing, but good on him.
If you could borrow from any royal wardrobe, whose would it be?
Princess of Wales. She is impeccably dressed on all occasions. I mean, some of the dresses that stand out for me, that beautiful glittering gold Jenny Packham gown that she wore to the, I think it was the No Time to Die premiere, and she absolutely outshone every Bond girl that there ever has been. And actually her most recent appearance at Trooping the Colour, the pressure that she was under there to get it right, knowing that everybody was going to be looking at her and scrutinising her appearance. And actually she was again wearing a Jenny Packham gown, an upcycled dress that she'd worn before during the coronation for one of the walkabouts. They'd changed it with a striped bow, and she looked absolutely on point. Perfect.
She rarely gets it wrong.
No, she doesn't.
I remember even the video that we had of the Prince and Princess of Wales at the farm shop. Even then, she was looking glamorous. She was wearing, leggings, some boots, and a jacket. Even then, she looked like, she was kind of owning the farm shop. She looked like she was a proper stylish. So yeah, she never really gets anything wrong.
She really doesn't get it wrong.
Final question. What do you think has been the biggest royal crisis of the last, should we say, 50 years?
Wow, I mean, that's a big period, isn't it, to cover? And, in that we have the annus horribilis, the death of Princess Diana, I think has to be the biggest crisis of that period for the royal family. The impact that it has had on William and Harry and will continue to have.
That's a really good point. It's the ongoing kind of legacy on the children, and then you've got the King and Camilla getting together. It's had the biggest kind of impact, hasn't it, really?
And then, of course, the last 6-7 months, which none of us could have foreseen, that has rocked the monarchy. We are so used to the longevity of members of our royal family, Prince Philip, the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth. To have the King and the Princess of Wales, the most senior members of the royal family, two of the most senior members of the royal family, suffering serious health conditions, has shaken the monarchy to its core, and also the nation in terms of what it means and could mean.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. And everybody, if I'm out with my friends, they're always asking me about the King and the Princess of Wales. How is she? How is he? Are they okay? And it's. I think we'll look back in 5 or 6 years as the period where they were both ill as a real time that they've really, as they shook the foundations, but hopefully.
Yeah, and we have to
hope
that, and that's why it was so significant when we saw the King at Easter at Windsor, doing that first walkabout since his cancer diagnosis and now back to work. You could feel that collective sense of willing him on to be back out in public. And again, the Princess of Wales at Trooping the Colour, hopefully at Wimbledon, hopefully we'll see more of her. But, there's a long road ahead.
Yep, but lots of hope. We've got through a lot. I think I've had a wonderful time. I think I've learnt some things, and I think we've had some fun and had a really good chat. So I really appreciate you coming on. We wanted you to come on for a long time, and I think we've had a lovely time. So I hope you enjoyed yourself.
It's been great to be here. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you to everyone for watching.
Right, well, yes, thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates.